at some level, you have to realize that we in dealerships, just like in hospitality, we're in the people-loving business.
Yep.
And if you don't love people, then you should probably move aside, even if you're the owner, and put somebody in who does.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Keep the Change. I'm so glad you guys are here with me today. And I got to tell you, I am with an elite human today, as we tend to have elite humans every week. But this gentleman was my favorite boss of all time. I've never respected anybody I've worked for more. I've never liked their style more. I've never seen anybody move a room better. I've never seen anybody really run a company better. And his evidence manual today has over 5 companies that he leads. And get this, 5 kids and 17 grandkids. He's got me beat. Ladies and gentlemen, let me reintroduce to you my good friend, my mentor, somebody I've always admired, Euse Mita. Thanks, Euse, for being with us on Keep the Change.
Bart, not only am I privileged to be here, but you just made my day. That's the greatest introduction I've ever heard in my life. And I will be repeating this so at least Susie can hear it. So thank you very much for that. Yes. I think the 17 grandkids are already fans, so we're in good shape there.
Right.
And you and I were speaking, Bart, about how do you lead, or what makes a leader? And there's been so many books on this and everything else. But one thing I've learned in life, and you've known me, and I didn't know how to label it when you and I were together. Like, I didn't know, somebody said, well, explain your leadership style. I didn't really know how to explain it, except for like how to win friends and influence people that I love. I have a genuine love for people and for their well-being. Well, here we are, believe it or not, Bart, it was 25 years ago that we sold half a car.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, we have these 5 companies that I am the CEO of, but each one has their own distinct and beautiful culture. But one thing I learned in life, one of the many things, is what's going to change you from who you are today to tomorrow is the books you read, the people you meet, the goals you set and achieve. And I've read hundreds and hundreds of books on leadership and motivation. And I remember Sue asking me years ago, why don't you just read a novel? And I said, because I love reading and hearing about leadership and leadership styles. And everybody knows Walter Isaacson. I shouldn't say it, but I'm supposing they do. The Steve Jobs autobiography, the Elon Musk autobiography. And of course I read them both. And you know what I got out of both books, Bart, really? If you said, Eustace, give it to me in 30 seconds. 2 very sad men. 2 men who were so accomplished, who were so talented, and really who were so loved. And by the same token, 2 very unhappy guys. So let's talk about culture for a while. Another thing I learned is it's a medical fact that there's 18 inches between your head and your heart. And my own belief is that most companies lead with their head. I'll give an example. I'm not picking on them, but Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola's mission statement is, we change the world. Now, let me ask you a question, Bart. Can you really sink your teeth into water that is full of sugar and that has addictive substance called caffeine in it, and they're changing the world? How can a Coca-Cola truck driver get his arms around that? So in our companies, we say, wait a minute, we're not going to stay in the head, we're going heart. So the other thing I found out is that realize in all these books I read that people talk about the mission statement. They give you the what, but they don't give you the why behind it. And one of the things that we've tried to do, I will tell you another book I read in 1986, and it was called Peak Performers by Charles Garfield, so many decades ago, actually 40 right now as we speak. And I got a lesson from that book that I always remember. And here's what it was. He was a graduate of MIT, and he wanted to be a rocket scientist. Well, back then, and until most recently, there was only one place to work, and that was NASA. So he goes into NASA to get a job, and he's interviewing with this guy. Let's say his name is Bart. And he says, hey, Bart, I've been here all day, and everybody's so excited. I love the atmosphere. What is it that everybody's so excited about? And he looks at him, and he says, Eustace. His name was Charles, so let's stay with him. He says, Charles, He said, for 20 years here at Nassau, I felt like a piece of furniture. He said, now we have a mission. And he took him outside and he said, look up there. And he pointed to the moon. He said, we have a mission. President Kennedy said, we're going to get to the moon and we're going to do it in this decade. Now, he meant decade, but that Bostonian accent, this decade. And so this was like 1960, 61. And so in 2 years, they got there. And everybody was so excited. And then 6 months after the moonshot was over, he noticed that the excitement, the motivation within NASA was gone. And he said to his boss, Bart, he said, Bart, what happened here? And Bart said to him, I'll tell you what happened. Take a walk outside. They go outside, now it's daytime, and he points up to the moon and he says, mission accomplished. And what that taught me, Bart, is we always have to keep a mission out in front of us so that we're always working to achieve a greater mission. And so much of that has to be involved in your mission statement. For example, Icona, which is our hotel company, from that lesson I learned 40 years ago, I wanted to make sure that people knew what our name meant. So Icona, our name is our mission. If you cover the A at the end there, it says icon. If you look in Wikipedia, an icon is a sacred place, person, or thing. If you cover icon, you have an A. The A stands for aloha, which is the Hawaiian name that stands for warmth, welcome, and love. So we say, taken together, Icona, our name is our mission. Our hotels are sacred places where we want our guests to have a heavenly experience and feel our warmth, our welcome, and our love. So we say, listen, you got to be able to have something to sink your teeth in. So our dishwashers, if you ask them, they could tell you that. Our general managers, we have 8 hotels. If you ask them, they tell you exactly what I told you the same way. And then we always teach in threes because people are so in tune to threes. Think about it, Bart. When you come out of the womb, what do you learn as an infant? Nursery rhymes. You learn the 3 blind mice, the 3 little pigs, Goldilocks and the 3 bears. And then when you get to grade school, ABC 1, 2, 3. So that's the way we're programmed. Well, now it's even more important because you have iPhones and the distractions are unbelievable today. So I always say don't teach in anything more than threes. So we say there's 3 things you need to be part of Team Icona. You have to have a passion for people, you have to have a heart for hospitality, and you have to look at hospitality as a ministry. All right? Now, that's the what, Bart. But 90%, we have found 90 plus percent of companies never give you the why. You have to have a passion for people. Why? Because we're in the people loving business. And if you don't love people, you shouldn't be in hospitality. You have to have a heart for hospitality. Why? Because our Lord said the highest form of love is to serve. And that's all we do. We serve food, we serve drink, and we put them in a beautiful bed that's nice and warm in between clean sheets. And then we say, hospitality is our ministry. Why ministry? Well, because think about it, Bart. When you say the word work is a negative word. So we say take the word work out, throw it away, and substitute it with the word vocation. So when everybody's going to work on Monday, Bart, I'm going to my vocation. And I absolutely love it. And we say to our guests, your vacation is our vocation. And so that's only the tip of the iceberg. And this is our Icona culture card. And we every Tuesday, and one thing I learned, Bart, one of the greatest things from half a car, you and I know, is that repetition is the foundation of learning. And the dealers that we trained twice a year were better than the dealers that had no training. The dealers we trained 4 times a year, once a quarter, were better than the ones that only had 2. Well, guess what? We took that premise because I always say people die, but good business principles are transferable from business to business. We teach our people, we train them every single week, Bart. Every Tuesday we have Aloha training. And we say, miss a meal, but don't miss this training. And we do it in all our companies. And I got to tell you, Bart, here's the payback. And the reason I'm focusing on Icona is because people know about hotels. So we have 8 hotels. We have 7 we're still finishing construction on, but we have 7 operating. And every one of our hotels in every city we serve are rated number 1 on TripAdvisor. Now, let me explain why that's impressive to me. Because there's 5,000 banks in the USA. There's 15,000 car dealers of size, as you know, in the USA. There's 100,000 hotels and motels. So guess what? Not only, and by the way, TripAdvisor to me is really more important than a Condé Nast or even a AAA 5-star. And here's why. Because the AAA 5-star Condé Nast, they come in with a clipboard and they evaluate your hotel based on the amenities. Well, the voice of the customer, the voice of the guest is absolutely the most important. So on TripAdvisor, it's the guest rating who's number one. So when Sue and I are going to travel, first thing I do is look on TripAdvisor for the top 3 rated hotels. So how have we been able to do that amongst much harder competition than dealerships and banks? And the reason we've been able to do it, Bart, one answer: culture. Culture. And so we started a program you're going to love called Icona Means Business. So it doesn't matter what business you're in. Coca-Cola means business. We say, I'm going to tell you, whether you're a dealer, whether you were a distributor for Coke or Pepsi, or whether you're selling iPhones, I ask them a question. Do you take 3 questions? How do you like that, Bart? Always in threes.
Awesome.
Question number one is, do you have an annual leadership retreat? Now notice, words paint pictures, so we put the word annual, so the power of your subconscious mind, they realize you got to do it at least once a year. Do you have an annual leadership retreat? We didn't say a meeting, we didn't say an offsite. We called it a retreat for a reason, where you take your leadership team. That's the first question. Number 2, do you get out of your own environment? Because you and I both know we started training dealerships, it didn't work. Even if they had the beautiful training facilities, you got to get them out of their own environment so they're not talking to their salesman. Oh, I'm sorry, my general manager needs me, my sales manager needs me. So it's always in a hotel offsite. So get out of your own environment is number 2. Number 3, and go over your vision, your mission, and your goals. Now, 3 things again, but why is that important? And the companies that we've asked this question to, Bart, 10% said yes, they do have such a meeting. 90% say no, they don't. So you can see the universe of companies that need culture training. And then I had this one company, I won't mention their name, Blue Cross, but very big company, beautiful training facilities. And when I was discussing this, Icona means business, but in this case I changed the name to Blue Cross means business. And he said, well, our people know our vision, our mission, our goals. I said, well, that's great. Would you mind bringing in a couple of top managers? This was the CEO. So he brings them in and asks them, and not one of them got it right. And I said, see, because you at the meeting, you have to tell them what the vision for the company is. You have to tell them what the mission is. And it's got to be a mission. Remember the lesson from Nassau that they will always be able to sink their teeth into, and that is ongoing. And then you have to give them the goals, because you and I both know if you don't have goals, you're wandering around hitting walls, or you're on the lazy river just hitting the river walls as it is. So we have companies now, Bart. We started this 5 years ago, and our retention rate is 90% because they know how valuable that is. And now they understand that repetition is the foundation of learning, but the CEO sets the pace. He's the captain of the ship. And so we always open the meeting up. He personally has to open the meeting up with at least an hour or 90 minutes. So he's setting the vision, he's reiterating the mission, and then he tells them that the goals that they're going to set. Now, Bart, you're going to love this. One of the other 3 things on our culture card here is we say, words paint pictures, always keep them positive. Music stirs the soul, always keep it upbeat. Water soothes the soul. Get in it, get on it, or get near it whenever you can. So we suggest, luckily, all our hotels are on water. So as you can imagine, that's our suggestion, and it's the best one. And so those are the 3 things that we say. And we say, now here's another way to accelerate learning. Because music stirs the soul, we say, now, after you give your 90 minutes on vision, mission, and goals, then you have all your managers, because you prepared them, and you say in their department, you want to hear what their goals for their department is. So now they're presenting back to you. And Bart, you're going to love this, because I did this many years ago, but I didn't know how to label it. Now I have a label on it. And I say, every one of your managers, before the meeting, before you go away out of your own environment, they have to pick out their favorite song or a favorite song of theirs. And before their presentation, they have to play the song, and it has to have the lyrics either up on the screen when the song is playing, or you give it out to them, and then they have to explain to their peers why they picked that song and what it means to them. So as you and I both know, that's an icebreaker. Remember when I used to do that when we were making presentation to Ford or General Motors, and I put the music on? It was not only to stir up the crowd, it was to take my anxiety down. It was to calm me down. And I got so excited because it was always my favorite song that I picked. So with our people, I stopped picking my favorite song and I said, you pick your favorite song. And we've done it now for 8 years with our own company, and they just love it. And, they'll pick a different song every year depending on what the mood is or where it is. But see, it's not just the what, pick a song, it's the why. Why did you pick that song? And the camaraderie that it creates now amongst our people don't just like each other, they love each other, Bart. And it's so much fun for me to sit in the grandstands and see it. I don't even teach Icona Means Business anymore. Another one of our philosophies is each one to teach one, each one to teach one. You have to mentor somebody if you get hit by a truck. But instead of jealousy, we're a flat organization, just like we were at Half a Car. But we use, remember when we introduced this, when we said the least important word is I, the most important word is we? Well, that's the what. Now we've evolved and we give them the why. We say least is the important word. Well, that's the what. Why? Because I isolates you. Who wants to be isolated? I keeps you alone. We is the most important word. Well, why? Because we unites us. It brings us all together. All of us need each of us, and each of us need all of us. So this philosophy is so embedded in our people's hearts, Bart. I mean, you can tell just by the way I'm saying it. And we say the two most important words are, I'm sorry. Nobody says that anymore, Bart. I'm sorry. And all it does is just, it takes anxiety from people. But anyway, so I won't take you through all that. But like I said, our philosophy, our culture is so heart-based instead of head-based. And I would challenge, not because we're the best or the greatest, but because we have prioritized our culture, and the results speak for themselves. So when I'm trying to sell Icona Means Business to another company, and it could be, Nollenberger Ford Means Business, whatever the name of the company is, that goes on our presentation. And like I said, it's the highest closing ratio I've ever seen in anything I've ever sold in my life. And we're running 85% closing ratio. And the reason is because no CEO, no CFO, or no COO can deny what I just said to you. Not one of them. And if they do, I say, well, let's do an experiment. Bring somebody in and let's ask them questions. Once that happens, it's game over, Bart. Game over. So that would be my 50,000 down to 15,000 foot view of how important culture is. But now, since it's evolved, Bart, I'll ask them, what's your culture? And the majority, meaning over 50%, can't tell me what their culture is.
Yeah.
And you know why they can't tell me, Bart? Because they don't have one. They don't have one. And you can survive for a while if you have a product that people want or service that people want. But if you don't have that culture, it's going to die. Here's how extreme I mean that. Remember, I told you the two most important jobs of a CEO are to drive culture and to allocate capital.
Yeah.
Well, if you misallocate capital and you go bankrupt, but your culture is strong, those same people, that team that you built, that culture that you built, can start up again in 120 days and start making profits again. So I think it was Peter Drucker who said, and I didn't hear about this until this year, he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Wow.
So yes, strategy is important. But if you have a culture, I look at it, Marcus Aurelius. When Caesar, tried to inspire the troops, they'd be all clapping and motivated. When Marcus Aurelius inspired them, they say, let us march. So that's the difference. And I think when you have a strong culture, then everybody looks at each other and let us march. And every one of them can say what I just said to you. All of us need each of us, and each of us need all of us. None of us can do it alone. I once said to our dishwasher in one of our kitchens at the hotels, his name was Rogelio. And I said, Rogelio, who's more important here, me or you? And he says, oh, Mr. Eustace, you are. I said, no. I said, Rogelio, I took a glass, Bart. Now, this glass is really plastic, but I'm going to show you what I did. I took a glass, and I went like this. And I said, Rogelio, look at that glass. You just washed it. There's no lipstick on there. There's no watermarks on there. I said, you know what you just said to our guest? You, back here in the dishwasher, just said to our guest, I love you. I love you. I love you. Scroll number 2. I will greet this day with love in my heart.
Yeah.
And who can refuse my goods that feels my love? And I said to him, Rogelio, I remember so well Martin Luther King. Can you still hear me, Bart?
I can hear you beautifully.
Martin Luther King said, if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper that you can be, so that when you die, they'll point to your grave and say, there lies the greatest street sweeper that ever lived. And from that day forward, on every one of our dishwasher walls, I put up Martin Luther King saying.
Oh, that's so good.
That's
So,
part of the so cultural, Bart. Sorry, go ahead.
no, don't, please. I'm so blown away from our days with Half a Car and the culture that you put in place there. Unlike any training company, you wouldn't even call it a training company, a company of catalysts anywhere in the world. You took these same philosophies and put it into place, and later, a number of years later, sold your company to Reynolds and Reynolds. What were the lessons you learned about building that company that led you to, after this, you've been in automotive in and out, you were in automotive before, and you're still in automotive a bit, along with your other businesses. But what were some of the lessons you've learned as one of the key leaders at Half a Car for that period of time? Because that was a nice little run.
It was a great run. It was a great run, Bart. And I learned many lessons. But one of the lessons that I learned is when you only have a less than a handful of customers, that life is a hairline and you can be put out of business tomorrow.
Mm.
And because as you know, my uncle also used this, he invented leasing. He really did. And consumer leasing. Fleet leasing was out there, but he invented consumer leasing. Really, as a young guy in 1963 as a Chevrolet dealer. But because 80% really of our business was Ford Motor Company, and the rest was General Motors, and we had that New Every Two network, so we had some other brands in there. But what I learned is that I didn't sleep that well, believe it or not, Bart. And then, we had some Me Too's come along, and they didn't have the same thing. They were lease trainers. We were so far deeper than that. But it really doesn't matter. When you're part of a big corporation, and Euse and I, my uncle Eustace Wolfington, he and I still talk all the time, and he'll say to me, we never should have sold the company, Euse. I said, really, Euse? So in 2008, when they eliminated all their marketing, advertising, every vendor in America and in the world, you think they would have said, well, let's keep Half a Car. I said, I don't think so. So I took those lessons and I said, the next business, and by the way, as you know, one thing that helped us a lot, we had purchased a little tiny company called Automark. When I say little tiny, we paid $500,000 for it. And with Dave Boyce, who was a great leader there, we brought Dave along, and they become the second largest, as part of Half a Car. AutoWeb became the second, or Automark became the second largest hoster of dealers' websites. And, Cobalt was number one. We were number two, but they were not profitable. We were. Back in the internet days, I was like, oh, don't be profitable. Just try to get bigger. That formula is not really a great one for success. I sleep better, Bart, when we make a profit. So I looked at that, and, we had cyber cars. So we really, we were leading the automotive industry, and that's how we got together with Reynolds. I said to the chairman of Reynolds at the time, and, I said to him that you have something we don't have, and we have something you don't have. But what we have, you can't duplicate because we have know-how. And I said, you're basically a computing company, albeit the biggest at the time. And of course, his name was Buzz Waterhouse, which is a great tech name. It's something out of a cartoon. And I said to Buzz, but I think, together we could just dominate the industry. And that began the conversation of where Reynolds and Reynolds, I called it a merge, but it was really an acquisition. But it's interesting. They said they wanted our culture, Bart, and they were sincere. But if you don't know, if you're the leader, like I was, Buzz then was president CEO, and I was executive vice president COO. But that took me out of the half a car. I mean, we still had half a car under our purvey, but it all got diluted because he still made the final decisions. And what happens is he didn't have the culture. So that's why you say you buy a company because you want their culture, and the culture gets destroyed because it gets overwhelmed by the existing culture, because it's like, it's the what do you call it? It's the numbers. The numbers. They had 5,000 people. We had 300. So I think it's very hard to do that. So we are not going to be acquired. People ask me, "Are you going to be acquired?" And I say, "No, we're not going to. We're not looking to be. We will acquire, but we're not looking to be acquired." And because I value that culture, and I wouldn't do that, to our people.
Yeah. So what comes to mind is automotive. I love the hospitality business. I
Yeah.
love the book by Will Gorda, Unreasonable Hospitality and the Walk. And I just believe that culture that he puts into place in his restaurants would be ideal culture to put in place in businesses. But there's a white noise going on. When you say the word pivot, people think, oh, I've heard that so many times it doesn't have any impact. When we say the word coach, they think, oh, yeah, that we've heard that so many times it doesn't have an impact. Culture, that word, culture has been around forever. The evidence of what your culture that you've installed is in profits and people, no doubt about it. But how do we get that audience of automobile dealers, and many are listening here, to really re-embrace the culture in their business? How do they? There's a lot of great leaders out there, entrepreneurs within automotive. Again, you've been around it forever. How do you again, I'm going to repeat my question. How can they embrace culture and see what the benefits of culture are for them? If I worded that right, I think that's the way I wanted it. I like that.
No, I think I can answer it the way you worded it. So one quick thought on Will's book. It was a very good book. Will, you may not know this, but Will's mentor was, now his name escapes me. This is what happens when you're here 6 decades.
Annie
But
Myers.
yeah, Danny Myers, who started Shake Shack. So
Yeah.
I read Danny's book. I've met Danny. He's a super guy, by the way. And but here, let me just talk dealers with you, because as you know, the only thing I love as much as the smell of a new house and a new hotel is the smell of a new car. That has never changed for me, Bart. I absolutely love it. Still read automotive news all the time. I'm still a partner in Penske Capital Partners, which is now TRP, Transportation Resource Partners. So I've never not been involved. I just switched. I was 90% automotive my first 20 plus years and 25 years in business, and 10% real estate, hospitality, and now it's switched. I'm 90% hospitality, real estate, and 10% automotive. But here's what I would say to you. Both books good. You're talking about a company that I used to say, if you can make in the dealership business, you can make in any business. Bart, I don't say that anymore. We have 10 restaurants. I say, if you can make it in food and beverage, then you can make it in any business in the world. It is so tough. Why? Because you're 24/7 working. The dealerships close up at night. Restaurants, if you're closed up, by the time the people leave, it's midnight. And if it's later than that, it's awful. And it's a very difficult business, but it's addicting. And I think the addictive part is because if you are a social person, you're around people, it's moving fast, but it's not a high paying business. So that's one aspect. But I would liken the hospitality business, meaning hotels, that part of it, to a dealership. And I think if there's any dealers who are listening, I would ask them to hone in very specifically right now on what I'm about to say. When you're in a restaurant, you're in the food business. When you're in the hotel business, you have many businesses within a business. You have housekeeping, you have maintenance, you have food and beverage, and you have finance. Now, that is not that far off a dealership. In a dealership, you have new car, you have used car, you have service, you have parts. And when I talk about the culture of thinking and acting as one, that's the most successful, in my opinion, how they can be more successful, even if they are successful. And the car business, as you and I know, has been the best in the last 5 years that it's ever been. And because of the consolidation of dealerships, you have less dealers of your own make and model to compete with. But here's what I would say to them. Because you look at the aspects, what we say in hospitality, and I'm going to say in dealerships, you have to be, you, the general manager or the owner, depending on how much the dealer principal is involved, think of your business as an orchestra. Think of your business as an orchestra. Okay, new car sales, that's the horn section. Used car sales, that's percussion. Let's talk about service. Okay, service, you're the string section. Let's talk about parts. Parts, you're going to be we said horn, we said string, we said, you're going to be the piano or pianos. And you have to get them, you're the conductor, and you have to get them all playing in harmony. And you have to hit it and say, all right, boom, new car sales, you're in. Used car sales. And they have to have that harmony together. So what we did, which I think was the lesson from Half a Car, Bart, if you look at the most successful hotel marks today, you think about the Four Seasons and you think about the Ritz-Carlton and the St. Regis. Even the best of the best, they really only teach your people in two categories, meaning they teach them food and beverage and they teach front desk. We don't have separate treating. When we have our Aloha meetings, we have maintenance in there, we have housekeeping in there, we have valet in there, we have food in there, we have beverage in there. And that's what I would say to the dealers. Get everybody together at least once a week as an entire team, not just new car sales, not just used car, because the harmony that'll create in your dealerships, when customers come in, when guests come in, they can feel that there's a great camaraderie between each other. You don't even have to say it. So Bart, you go, please, I'm begging you, when we get off, go look at any Icona's TripAdvisors. And you'll be like, wow, yeah, we get some bad ones, but we're still number one. The margin is like 50-1. And the people, they're articulated. Oh, the people were so nice. The valet was so nice. The front desk was so nice. What they're really saying, but they don't know how to articulate, is when we stay at Icona, when we stay at Mahalo, that's our select service brand, we feel loved. It's that simple. Now imagine the loyalty that dealerships could create with their customers, their guests when they came in, to say, not only at Nollenberger Ford, at Nollenberger BMW, I didn't just buy a car. Man, these people, they made me feel loved. They made me feel loved. The books you read, the people you meet, books you read, How to Win Friends and Influence People. What did Dale Carnegie teach us? The greatest craving of the human heart is appreciation. Appreciation. And what did he say that the most sweetest sound to a person's ears is? The sound of their own name. Everybody has name tags at Icona. Why? Well, we have 1,000 team members now. I don't know everybody's name, but I don't pass. We have a rule, and I don't pass anybody in our hallway, nor can they allowed to pass me without saying, hi, Euse, hi, Bart. Now, the lobby, they must laugh if somebody's been sitting there for half an hour, because if I go by 3 times, they'll hear me say, hi, Bart, even though you're at the front desk, hi, Bart, and they might laugh. But you know what? That's the sweetest sound to a person's ears. We're not allowed to just say hi, and they know I say this out of love. Here's why you can't just say hi, because you want to say their name, because it creates camaraderie. I'll never say hi. It's always going to be, hi, Bart, goodbye, Bart, hello, Bart. So very important. I hope that helps our dealer friends.
I hope that does too. And what I hear about that is they don't want to know how much you know. They want to know how much you care. I say it so much.
Yes.
And my other favorite quote is, you can get anything you want if you help enough people get what they want. And
Zig Ziglar, baby.
Yeah. And to think that, I think we've gotten away, with technology, with this fast-paced world, with the people who, and this isn't a bash. I never want to bash my brothers, but the people that run dealerships in many cases are transactional personalities, right?
Yes.
So I remember one guy that ran a big store in the Midwest, and he said, oh, I hate Maxwell. I said, how can you not like John Maxwell? And he said, it's not my philosophy. It's not my business style, because it was about caring, because it was about loving. And
Yes.
you know, that guy was successful. Who am I to say anything? But I just believe that people want to know how much you really care for them. And if you do, you'll stick around. And if you do, you perform better. You made me feel like I was an absolute superstar. And I didn't know what I was doing when I started. But you made,
Well, you
you,
became a superstar, Bart. You became
yeah,
one.
thanks to you. But it
Uh,
started with you believing in me before I even believed in myself. That
yes.
to me was critical back then and now too. And I believe that so much. So, how do we spread the word? We've got just a few more minutes, but how do we spread the word to people that run businesses that that culture, really looking at culture will define your bottom line as well? How do we let them know that there is a better way than the way they've been doing it?
I think that's a great question, Bart. And what I would say to them, and some people may say this is, crazy, at some level, you have to realize that we in dealerships, just like in hospitality, we're in the people loving business.
Yep.
And if you don't love people, then you should probably move aside, even if you're the owner, and put somebody in who does. Because
Mm,
what you described, Bart, when you and I were together, and you said that, I made you feel good about yourself. But it also stemmed because I loved you. And I
yeah.
love you now. I mean, here we are 25 years later, and you can call me, and in 1 second, I smile because I think of Bart and I think of who you are. And I think it's important. And if you don't want to use the word love, then let's go back to how to win friends and influence people. Appreciation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Appreciation. Just have to let them know you appreciate them. And that's how important culture is. And do things together. You really want to do things. And just having that annual leadership retreat and taking your all, oh, you don't have to go to some island anywhere. Sometimes if we're not having a great year, we'll go to Annapolis. But we're on the water there. I mean, here we are, we're preaching, get out of your environment, but we practice what we preach. We have 8 hotels, Bart. Guess which hotel we have our meeting in? Not one. Why
Mm,
not, Eustace? Because that's my environment. We got to get out of our own environment.
love it.
So we'll go to the Annapolis Waterfront Hotel. Well, last year we went to Baja Mar in the Bahamas. But,
Mm,
we'll go stay right here in New Jersey, go up to Seaview. So I think that if they realize if you literally put your people first, then they will literally put your customers first. But you got to have a culture, and it can't be up here. It can't be what I call corporate B speak.
yeah.
18 inches between the head and the heart, got to be in the heart.
I love it. Faith has been a huge part of your life. And when I first met you, I knew of faith, but I didn't really understand faith. But you were the example of a faith based leader. So tell us about we talked about your family when we started. Your wife, Susie, and you have been married how long?
48 years, Bart. 48 years.
And
I can remember we're 2 years away from our 50th, and I remember in churches they'd say, "Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Nollenberger, give them a big round of applause. They're married 50 years." He gets up on his walker. She can't get out of the pew. So, just to let you know, Bart, I can't run because I ran for
every day.
7 days a week. So I have degenerative disc disease, L345, but I still swim 2 miles a week, and I'm
Mm,
still lifting weights 4 days a week, an hour a day. So by
yeah.
the grace of God, we're still moving, brother. But since you asked that question, I'd like to answer it in another way too. If you want to be wealthy, you have to have a wealth plan. If you want to be healthy, you got to have a health plan. If you want to get close to God, you have to have a get close to God plan. And when I talk vision, mission, goals, I always tell our people, our teams, and I do this, I meet with them separately, not just to make sure that they have them, but you put your goals in 4 categories. Financial, yes. Relationship, yes. Physical, yes. What you want to weigh, be specific. How much you want to weigh? What's your workout look like? How many days a week? And then the fourth one is spiritual. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know how to start my day any other way, Bart. I
Mm,
start this morning, 6 mornings a week. I start at 5:30 a.m. and do my physical workout. At 7 a.m., I'm at my spiritual workout, which for me is mass. It can be something else to somebody else, but I can't start without talking to my creator. When people talk about I put it out to the universe and all, and I love that. I think that's great. but I say, I talk to the creator of the universe. I like to go to the top. So I go right to the creator. While you're talking to the universe, I'm talking to the creator of the universe. And I stay every morning, I say, all right, I'm here, Lord. I'm awaiting or you're waiting your orders. What are we doing today? And then I go.
My favorite is Psalm 139. Search me, God, know my heart. Test me for my anxious thoughts. Reveal anything in me that offends you and lead me in your way everlasting. And I just love it. It has everything to do with where I am right now. And, we had this talk offline. From who I am to where I am is just grace and blessings. It's just unbelievable how much grace and blessings God's given me. And the rest of the time he's got me on this planet, I'm running hard to let everybody know whose I am and who he is.
Well, Bart, I want to thank you, and I hope we have another minute left, and if we don't, we can add other minutes. Here's why I want to thank you. By the grace of God, I started Man Up Philly, which is a Philadelphia Men's Spirituality Conference. We get about 1,500 a year. We do this annually. Then we went and started Man Up New York with Cardinal Dolan, and then Man Up New Jersey with our bishop here, and we're soon to start Man Up Boston. And my brother, what's so great about you? I'm going to say this to you. Welcome to the rescue mission, because you are a leader in the rescue mission. And there's nothing more important than we can talk on this podcast, because it's out there. It's a fight for souls, my brother. And whatever little tidbits you can give them. Hey, listen, you just mentioned a psalm. As we know, most of these psalms were written by King David. And one of the greatest sinners of all time, Bathsheba, Hey, listen, he's a man. You can't blame him. Well, there's a prayer Pope Clement wrote. He says, Lord, help me to tame my natural instincts. A man's natural instincts, we have testosterone. It goes in our mind. But the beautiful part about it is that our Lord is as long as we want to do better, he's going to help us. And what you're doing, Bart, is like I say, Icona is a Trojan horse for love. Well, your podcast is a Trojan horse for, when it's all said and done, love the Lord. So Amen. I thank you. I thank you for that, my brother.
A buddy of mine, Joel Manby, wrote a book called Love Works. And he was a former CEO of Saab. You probably remember the name from years ago, but he also was the CEO of HFE Entertainment, Dollywood, and all. Great guy, great book, but he talks about the 1 Corinthians and the love chapter in business. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast. It's a great read, and it's a great message. So I hope that I can be worthy of that, right? I hope I can.
You are, Bart. You are, brother.
Well, speaking of hoping, I hope that you and I get to do this again. Anytime you need me at any of those places in New York or Philly to be an ambassador for your cause, I'd love to. I know you have your Friday morning meetings that you've had for years, where you get to honor the Lord and a bunch of men get together. It's just such a gift for me to have this time with you. I'm so honored. I appreciate you so much. Your wisdom is off the chart. So you really should write a book there, my friend.
Yep. Well, I have most of the chapters done. There's one more that I am going to finish, and that'll probably happen in the next year. Oh, and I may have to change the title. When I started, the title was I Am Wounded, Not Slain. I Am Wounded, Not Slain. One of my best friends in the world, Mike Scanapico, a lawyer, went to high school together. I helped him, with a little financial help to go to law school. And when he got cancer, there was a poem, The Ballad of a Johnny. He was a soldier. And this saying, it was a beautiful quote. He says, I am wounded, not slain. I will sit and rest for a while, then rise to the fight again. And whenever I'd ask him how he's doing, like when he was dying, he'd grit his teeth and I'd say, Peaks, what's going on right now? What's going on? And he'd say to me like this, Bart, he'd go, wounded, not slain, wounded, not slain. And it was such a beautiful inspiration. Beautiful.
Yes. You're a great inspirer, my friend, and you walk the talk. Thank you for being who you are. Thanks for being on Keep the Change. It's been awesome. Thanks
you for having me, Bart. Love you, brother.
Love you, my friend. Everybody share this wisdom is incredible. And if you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe. We'll see you next time on Keep the Change. Make sure this one gets out. We need everyone to hear this message. Bless you, brother.
Bless you, Bart.